3 days had passed since Marcus destroyed the memory tree. 3 days of whispered mental conversations that cut off when he entered a room. 3 days of Zephrians looking at him like he might break something else just by breathing near it. The only reason he was still on the planet was Princess Luray's protection. And even that felt fragile. Marcus sat in the guest quarters, reading reports on his tablet, when the princess appeared in his doorway. She moved so quietly that he didn't notice her until she spoke. "Commander Kane," she said, "would you like to see something interesting?" He stood immediately, snapping to attention out of habit. "Of course, Your Highness." She smiled at his formality. "Please, call me Lirelay. And you do not need to stand like a statue. I am not your commanding officer." "Yes, ma'am. I mean Lirelay." The name felt strange on his tongue. She led him through passages he had never seen before, deeper into the Crystal Palace. The walls here were darker, and the light seemed to pulse with a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. "Where are we going?" Marcus asked. "To watch the trials of ascension. Every year, young Zephrians compete to join the Royal Guard. It tests both mind and body, thought and action. I thought you might find it educational." They emerged onto a balcony overlooking a vast arena carved from black stone. Below them, 6 young Zephrians stood in a circle. They wore simple white clothing and moved with the same flowing grace Marcus had come to expect from their people. Even their practice movements looked like dance. "These are our finest warriors," Lirelay explained. "Each has trained for decades to reach this level. Watch carefully." The first trial began. A complex puzzle of light appeared in the center of the arena, geometric shapes that shifted and changed in patterns that made Marcus's eyes water. The candidates had to solve it using only their thoughts, manipulating the pieces through telekinesis while calculating the mathematical relationships between them. Marcus watched in amazement as the young Zephrians worked. Their minds seemed to operate on a completely different level than his own. They moved the light shapes with casual ease, their faces calm and focused. Within minutes, 3 of them had completed the puzzle. "Impressive," Marcus said. "This is nothing," Lirelay replied. "Watch the combat trial." The arena floor shifted, creating obstacles and weapons from the same flowing crystal as the palace walls. The candidates paired off and began to fight. But it wasn't like any combat Marcus had ever seen. They moved like water and struck like lightning. Their telepathic abilities let them read each other's intentions, so the battles became contests of pure skill and creativity. Blades of crystallized thought clashed against shields of hardened air. The fighters flowed around each other in patterns too complex for Marcus to follow. "They're incredible," he admitted. "I've never seen anything like it." "No human could match them," Lirelay said quietly. "Your people fight with crude weapons and simple tactics. We fight with the power of pure thought." Marcus nodded. He couldn't argue with that. The skill level he was watching was beyond anything human warriors could achieve. The third trial began. A containment field appeared in the center of the arena, a sphere of crackling energy that held something dark and writhing inside. Marcus couldn't make out what the creature was, but it radiated danger like heat from a fire. "The Void Wraith," Lirelay explained. "A creature of pure chaos and hunger. The candidates must work together to strengthen the containment field using their combined mental power. It requires perfect coordination and absolute focus." The 6 candidates formed a circle around the field. They joined hands and closed their eyes. Marcus could feel the power building even from the balcony, a pressure in the air like the moment before lightning strikes. The containment field began to glow brighter. The thing inside thrashed and howled, but the field held steady. The candidates maintained their perfect coordination, their minds working as one. Then something went wrong. Marcus didn't know what caused it. Maybe the creature was stronger than expected, maybe one of the candidates lost focus. But suddenly, the field flickered and cracked. The creature inside pressed against the weakness, and the crack widened. Panic spread through the candidate's mental link. Marcus could feel it like static in the air. Their perfect coordination shattered. One of them stumbled backward, breaking the circle. Another fell to his knees. Overwhelmed by the chaos dot, the containment field failed completely. The void wraith erupted from its prison with a sound like reality, tearing apart. It was a thing of living darkness, constantly changing shape, with eyes like burning coals scattered across its form. It moved like liquid nightmare, reaching for the nearest candidate with tendrils of pure shadow. The young Zephrian froze. His elegant training had prepared him for controlled combat, for opponents who followed rules and patterns. This creature was chaos itself, and his mind couldn't process it. Marcus didn't think. He vaulted over the balcony railing and dropped into the arena below. The fall should have broken his legs, but adrenaline carried him through the impact. He rolled and came up running. "Get back!" he shouted at the frozen candidate. "Move!" The creature turned toward Marcus, drawn by his movement. Good. Better him than the kid. Marcus had no weapons except his hands and his training. The thing in front of him couldn't be fought with normal tactics, but chaos was something humans understood. Humans had been dealing with chaos since they learned to make fire. He grabbed a piece of broken crystal from the arena floor and hurled it at the creature's center mass. The crystal passed right through it, but the creature recoiled anyway. It didn't like sudden, unpredictable actions. Marcus kept moving, never staying in one place long enough for the creature to focus on him. He threw more debris, shouted random words, did everything he could to be loud and chaotic and confusing. It was the opposite of everything the Zephrians had taught him about proper behavior, but it worked. The creature became more and more agitated, its form flickering between shapes as it tried to decide what Marcus was. Predator? Prey? Threat? The uncertainty slowed it down. "The emergency containment system," Literally shouted from the balcony. "The red crystal by the wall." Marcus saw it, a crystal panel glowing with warning symbols. He sprinted toward it, the creature flowing after him like an ocean of night. His human endurance training kicked in. Zephrians were graceful and skilled, but humans were persistence hunters. They could run forever. He reached the panel just as the creature's tendrils wrapped around his legs. Pain shot through him like ice and fire, but he managed to slam his fist into the crystal. Emergency barriers erupted from the arena floor, trapping the creature in a cage of hardened energy. The thing shrieked and threw itself against the barriers, but they held. Marcus collapsed, his legs numb where the creature had touched him. The arena fell silent except for the humming of the emergency systems. Lirale was beside him in seconds, her hands glowing as she checked his injuries. "That was foolish," she said softly, "and magnificent." Marcus looked up at her, breathing hard. "Is everyone okay?" She nodded. "The candidates are shaken but unharmed. You saved them. They would have figured something out. They're smart." "Intelligence is not always enough," Lirale said. "Sometimes you need something more primitive. Something more—" She paused, searching for the word. "More human." Marcus struggled to sit up. Around the arena, the Zephrian candidates were staring at him with expressions he couldn't read. No longer with disgust or dismissal. Something else. Something that might have been respect. "The trials are over for today," Lirale announced. "We have much to think about." Commander Marcus Kane stood on the crystal platform and tried not to feel like a beast in a museum. Around him, the alien city of Zephyria stretched into the pale blue sky like a dream made of glass and starlight. The buildings curved and twisted in ways that hurt his human eyes to follow. Everything was too perfect, too clean, too beautiful. He pulled at his dress uniform collar. The fabric felt rough against his skin after seeing the flowing robes of the Zephrians. Their clothes moved like water, shifting colors with their thoughts. His own military blues looked crude and heavy by comparison. "The human delegation will please follow," said a voice inside his head. Marcus tried not to flinch. He still wasn't used to the telepathic communication. The Zephrian guide didn't even open her mouth. She simply placed thoughts directly into his mind with the casual ease of breathing. Marcus fell in step, behind Ambassador Chun and the other humans in their group. They walked through corridors that seemed to be carved from single pieces of crystal. The walls glowed with soft inner light, and Marcus could see his reflection stretched and distorted in their surfaces. He looked like what he was, a soldier trying to play diplomat. The other humans in the group were scientists and cultural experts. They had spent months learning about Zephian customs and philosophy. Marcus was only here because the military insisted on sending a representative. Someone had to protect the delegation if things went wrong. The Zephrians had agreed to his presence, but barely. Remember, Ambassador Chun had told him during the journey, "These people see us as primitive. They've had space travel for thousands of years, while we've barely left our solar system. They communicate with pure thought, while we still use crude spoken words. Try not to confirm their worst opinions about humanity." The guide led them into a massive chamber. Marcus's breath caught in his throat despite himself. The room was a perfect sphere carved from black crystal. Stars wheeled slowly across its surface, not painted or projected, but somehow captured and made part of the walls themselves. In the center of the sphere, a group of Zephrians waited on a platform that floated without any visible support. The Zephrians were tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to glow from within. Their large eyes were completely black, reflecting the star-filled walls. They moved like dancers, every gesture flowing into the next with liquid grace. Even standing still, they seemed to be in motion. At the center of the group stood a figure that made Marcus's soldier instinct snap to attention. Princess Lirelei. He had studied her file during the trip, but no photograph could capture the reality of her presence. She was beautiful in a way that seemed almost mathematical, as if someone had solved the equation for perfect proportions. Her silver hair floated around her head like she was underwater. When she looked at the human delegation, Marcus felt like she was seeing straight through him to his bones. The ceremony began with words Marcus couldn't understand and thoughts he couldn't hear. The Zephrians spoke to each other in their silent language, occasionally glancing at the humans, like zoo visitors looking at animals. Marcus tried to stand at attention and look professional. He focused on the protocol the ambassador had drilled into them. Then the princess gestured toward a pedestal that rose from the floor. On it sat a crystal sculpture of incredible delicacy, a tree made of what looked like frozen light, its branches spreading in complex patterns that seemed to shift when Marcus wasn't looking directly at them. "This is the memory tree of our ancestors," the princess said. Her voice like music played on crystal bells. "It holds the thoughts and dreams of every Zephrian who has ever lived. It is our most sacred artifact." Ambassador Chun stepped forward and bowed in the Zephrian style, his hands pressed together. "We are honored to witness such a treasure," he said. The princess nodded gracefully and moved toward the pedestal. "Please, come closer. You may observe, but do not touch. The memory tree is connected to our planetary consciousness. Physical contact from an untrained mind could cause damage." The human delegation moved closer. Marcus stayed at the back, trying to be invisible. But as they gathered around the pedestal, someone bumped into him. He stumbled forward, his shoulder hitting Ambassador Chun. Chun stumbled too, reaching out to steady himself. Time seemed to slow. Marcus saw Chun's hand moving toward the memory tree. He saw the princess's eyes widen in horror. He saw the other Zephrians starting to move, that their elegant, flowing motions were too slow. Marcus lunged forward. His combat reflexes took over. He grabbed Chun's wrist and pulled him back, but his momentum was too great. His shoulders slammed into the pedestal. The memory tree shattered. The sound was like every bell in the world breaking at once. Crystal fragments scattered across the floor, their light fading as they fell. The beautiful, impossible sculpture was nothing but glowing debris. Silence filled the chamber like poison. Marcus stood frozen, pieces of crystal crunching under his boots. Every Zephrian in the room stared at him with expressions of absolute shock and horror. Barbarian. The word appeared in Marcus's mind, dripping with disgust. He couldn't tell which Zephrian had sent it, but others picked it up. Savage. Beast. Destroyer. The thoughts hit him like physical blows. "Remove this creature from our sacred space," demanded one of the Zephrian council members, his mental voice sharp as broken glass. "Send all the humans away. They are not ready for civilization." Marcus opened his mouth to apologize, to explain, but what could he say? He had destroyed their most sacred artifact through pure human clumsiness. All his training, all his discipline, and he had still proven their point about humanity in the worst possible way. "Wait." Princess Lorelei's voice cut through the mental storm. She stepped forward, her bare feet silent on the crystal floor. The human tried to prevent the damage. I saw his intentions. He moved to protect, not to destroy. "The result is the same, Princess," another council member replied. "The memory tree is broken. Centuries of our ancestors' wisdom lost." The princess knelt and picked up one of the larger fragments. It still glowed faintly in her hands. "Perhaps," she said softly, "it is time we learned that some things are worth preserving even when they are broken." Her black eyes met Marcus's, and for a moment he felt something he hadn't expected, understanding. "The human will remain," she declared, rising gracefully to her feet. "As my guest." The alarms began at dawn, their crystal chimes echoing through the palace like screams of breaking glass. Marcus woke instantly, his soldier's instincts pulling him from sleep. Outside his window, the pale Zephrian sky was filled with streaks of fire, ships, falling from orbit like burning stars. He grabbed his clothes and ran for the door, nearly colliding with a Zephrian guard in the hallway. The aliens' usual calm was gone, replaced by something Marcus had never seen on their faces before. Fear. "What's happening?" Marcus demanded. The guard's mental voice was tight with panic. "The Void Seekers have returned. Our outer defense fleet is destroyed. The High Council has called an emergency session." Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. He had read about the Void Seekers in the intelligence briefings. Machine intelligences that had nearly wiped out the Zephrian Empire 3 centuries ago. They had vanished into deep space after their defeat, and everyone had hoped they were gone forever. He made his way to the council chamber, following streams of panicked Zephrians through corridors that no longer seemed beautiful. The crystal walls reflected fear and confusion, their usual soft glow flickering like dying candles. The council chamber was chaos. Dozens of Zephrian leaders filled the space, their mental voices creating a storm of overlapping thoughts and emotions. At the center of it all, Princess Lorelei stood beside the High Chancellor, her face pale but determined. Marcus stayed near the back, trying to be invisible. This wasn't his fight. He was just a guest, a human observer who had already caused enough trouble. "The outer defense grid is completely gone," reported Admiral Karath, his mental voice heavy with defeat. 50 ships destroyed in the first wave. The machines cut through our energy shields like they were nothing. "How is that possible?" demanded Counselor Verix. "Our defenses were improved after the last war. The new psychic resonance fields should have stopped them. The machines have adapted," the Admiral replied. "They're no longer vulnerable to our mental attacks." Their ships are shielded against telepathic interference. Our weapons barely scratch their hull. Marcus studied the tactical display floating above the council chamber. His human military training let him read the situation even through the alien symbols and formations. The picture was grim. The Void Seeker fleet was massive, hundreds of angular black ships moving in perfect coordination. They were already past the outer system, heading straight for Zephrian. "We should evacuate the royal family," suggested one of the counselors. "Preserve the bloodline until we can mount a proper defense." "Evacuate to where?" Admiral Kareth's mental voice was bitter. "They have faster ships than us. They know our language and our tactics. There is nowhere to run that they cannot follow." The argument went on for hours. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to flee. Still others suggested trying to negotiate with the machines. Marcus listened and felt a familiar frustration building in his chest. He had seen this before, smart people paralyzed by too many options. Too much analysis. Princess Lorelei remained silent through most of the debate, her black eyes thoughtful. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the mental noise like a blade. "What is our naval strength?" she asked. 200 ships of the line," Admiral Kareth replied. "But Princess, as I explained, our weapons are ineffective against their new armor. And our ground forces? 3 million royal guards across the home system. But they are trained for ceremonial duties and limited combat. Nothing like what we will face." Lorelei nodded slowly. "Show me the enemy formation again." The tactical display shifted, zooming in on the Void Seeker fleet. Marcus studied it with professional interest. The machines flew in perfect geometric patterns, each ship exactly where the mathematics said it should be. It was beautiful in its precision and completely predictable. "They fight like a computer program," he muttered under his breath. Every Zephrian in the room heard him. Their telepathic abilities meant that even his whispered words reached their minds. Hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. "Explain," Princess Lorelei said. Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Your Highness. I didn't mean to interrupt. This isn't my place." "I am asking you to explain," she repeated, her voice carrying royal authority. Marcus looked around the room at all the staring faces. These were some of the most intelligent beings in the galaxy, and they wanted him, a primitive human soldier, to explain military tactics to them. "It's just, look at their formation. Every ship is exactly where the optimal positioning algorithms say it should be. No deviation, no improvisation. They're fighting like they're following a perfect mathematical model. And this is bad because..." Admiral Kareth's mental voice was skeptical. "Because perfect mathematical models don't work in real combat. Combat is chaos. Variables change every second. Equipment fails. People panic. Good tactics adapt to what actually happens, not what the computer says should happen. You think we can defeat them?" Counselor Varix asked. "I think machines that fight like machines can be beaten by people who fight like people," Marcus said. "But it would mean giving up your elegant combat forms. It would mean fighting dirty." The council chamber fell silent. Marcus realized what he had just suggested, that the refined, beautiful Zephrian way of war was wrong, that their centuries of military tradition needed to be thrown away. Princess Lorelei stepped forward. "How dirty?" "Guerrilla tactics. Hit and run attacks. Asymmetric warfare. Make them react to you instead of following their programming. Force them to adapt faster than their systems can handle." "That is not how we fight," Admiral Kareth protested. "We are not barbarians." "No," Marcus agreed. "You're better than barbarians. You're smart enough to fight like barbarians when you need to." The debate erupted again, but this time Princess Lorelei wasn't listening. She stared at Marcus with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "There is something else," she said suddenly, silencing the room. Our ancient laws speak of choosing a champion in times of great peril, one who will stand beside the royal house and provide counsel in war. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Marcus could feel the shock radiating from the assembled Zephrians. "Princess," Counselor Varric said carefully, "those laws were written for Zephrian champions. Surely you cannot mean—" "I formally request that Commander Marcus Kane of Earth serve as my personal champion and military advisor in the coming conflict." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus felt like he had been struck by lightning. A human champion for an alien princess? It was unthinkable. "This is madness," Admiral Kareth declared. "He is an alien, a primitive. He destroyed our most sacred artifact. He also saved 6 of our finest warriors when they could not save themselves," Lirale replied calmly. "He sees what we cannot see because he thinks as we cannot think. The High Council will never approve this," Counselor Varric said. Princess Lirale turned to face the full assembly, her back straight and her voice carrying the weight of royal blood. "The law states that in times of existential threat, the heir to the throne may choose any champion she deems fit. I have made my choice." She looked directly at Marcus. "Will you accept?" Marcus thought about the burning ships in the sky, about the machine fleet bearing down on this beautiful world. He thought about the proud, elegant people who had treated him like a dangerous animal. And he thought about the princess who had seen something in him that he wasn't sure existed. "Yes, Your Highness," he said. "I accept." The room exploded into mental chaos, but Marcus barely heard it. He had just agreed to help defend an alien world against impossible odds, using tactics that might destroy everything the Zephrians held sacred. He just hoped it would be enough. The first volunteer almost quit after 10 minutes. Marcus watched the young Zephrian warrior pick himself up from the mud for the 3rd time, his elegant white robes now stained brown and green. Around them, the training ground looked like a battlefield, which was exactly what Marcus had intended. "I don't understand the purpose of this exercise," the warrior said, his mental voice tight with frustration. "Why must we crawl through dirt? Why can't we use our telekinetic abilities to move the obstacles?" "Because the machines don't care about your telekinetic abilities," Marcus replied. "They've adapted to counter your mental powers. All you have left is muscle, bone, and the willingness to do whatever it takes to win." More than half of the original volunteers had already left. Out of the 300 royal guards who had initially answered Princess Lirale's call, only 90 remained. But those 90 were beginning to change. Marcus had divided them into small teams and taught them to think like humans. No more elegant formations. No more predictable patterns. Instead, he drilled them in chaos theory, how to be random, how to be unpredictable, how to make the enemy react instead of planning their own moves. "Remember," he called out as the teams ran through an obstacle course designed to break their graceful habits. "The machines expect you to fight like Zephorians. So don't fight like Zephrians. Fight like something they've never seen before." It was working slowly. The warriors were learning to use terrain as a weapon, to attack from unexpected angles, to sacrifice beauty for effectiveness. But Marcus knew they were running out of time. Princess Lirale appeared at his shoulder, moving with her usual silent grace. Even after weeks of training together, she still surprised him with how quietly she could move. "The outer colonies have fallen," she said without preamble. "The Void Seekers will reach our home system within 2 days." Marcus nodded grimly. The reports had been getting worse each day. The machine fleet moved through space like a plague, consuming everything in its path. Traditional Zephrian tactics had proven worse than useless. They were actually helping the enemy by being so predictable. "How many ships did we lose in the Keller system?" he asked. 43, including Admiral Kareth's flagship. Her voice remained steady, but Marcus could see the pain in her black eyes. He refused to retreat when you advised it. He said running away was not the Zephrian way. That was the problem with the entire Zephrian military command. They would rather die beautifully than live ugly. Marcus understood honor and tradition, but he also understood that dead heroes couldn't protect anyone. What about the new tactics? Lorelei asked, watching her warriors struggle through a simulated urban combat scenario. They're learning, Marcus said. But 2 months of training can't undo centuries of tradition. They still hesitate before doing anything that seems ungraceful. And you believe this will work against the machines? Marcus was quiet for a moment, watching one of his teams use an improvised explosive device to clear a path through simulated enemy positions. The Zephrian warriors had been horrified when he first suggested using such inelegant weapons. But they were beginning to understand their effectiveness. The machines think in patterns, he said finally. They analyze, predict, and respond based on mathematical models. But human warfare isn't mathematical. It's psychological. It's about doing things that don't make sense until they suddenly do. The next day, the Void Seeker fleet entered the home system. Marcus stood in the command center, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. The enemy had nearly 500 ships, all moving in perfect formation toward Zephria's pale blue disk. The remaining Zephrian fleet, less than 100 ships, waited in orbit around their homeworld. They're not even trying to be sneaky about it, Marcus observed. Look at that formation. They're coming straight at us because they know we can't stop them. Princess Lorelei stood beside him, her hands glowing as she maintained telepathic contact with the fleet commanders. Admiral Ventos requests permission to engage the enemy at maximum range. He believes our new spread formation tactics might disrupt their coordination. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. Let them get closer. Let them think they know what we're going to do. They'll reach weapons range in 6 hours, she said. If we wait too long, trust me, Marcus said, then caught himself. He was asking an alien princess to trust the tactical judgment of a primitive human. But she had chosen him, and he couldn't let doubt creep in now. The waiting was the hardest part. Marcus watched the enemy fleet creep closer on the displays, their ships maintaining perfect spacing and formation. Everything about their approach screamed machine logic, optimal positioning, mathematical precision, no wasted movement. Now, he said when the fleets were 30 minutes from contact, signal all ships. Execute protocol chaos. The Zephrian fleet exploded into motion, not the graceful, coordinated ballet they had always performed, but something completely different. Ships broke formation and scattered in seemingly random directions. Some dove toward the planet's atmosphere. Others accelerated away from the battle zone. Still others simply stopped dead in space. On the tactical display, it looked like the Zephrian fleet was having a collective nervous breakdown. The Void Seeker response was exactly what Marcus had hoped for. Their perfect formation wavered as their targeting computers tried to track dozens of ships moving in unpredictable patterns. Their coordination algorithms, designed to counter traditional Zephrian tactics, couldn't cope with the chaos. Phase 2, Marcus ordered. The scattered Zephrian ships suddenly revealed their true purpose. The ones hiding in the planet's atmosphere launched surface-to-space missiles, crude, chemical-powered weapons that the machines had dismissed as primitive. The ships that had fled the battle zone circled back from unexpected angles, attacking the enemy flanks. Those that had stopped in space turned out to be mines, detonating as the machine ships passed through their positions. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't beautiful. But it worked. The Void Seeker fleet staggered under the assault, their perfect formation breaking apart as ships tried to respond to threats from every direction. For the first time in the war, Zephrian weapons were actually inflicting damage, but the machines adapted quickly. Within an hour, they had regrouped and begun pushing toward the planet with renewed coordination. Their losses had been significant, but not critical. "They're learning our new patterns," Lirelei observed. Her mental voice tight with concentration as she coordinated the defense. "Then we change patterns again," Marcus replied. He opened a communication channel to all remaining ships. "All units, this is command. Abandon current tactics. Repeat, abandon current tactics. I want every captain to do whatever they think will cause the most chaos. No coordination, no formation flying. Just make it impossible for the machines to predict what you'll do next." "That's not a strategy," protested Captain Theros from the heavy cruiser Starweaver. "That's madness." "Exactly," Marcus said. "Make them think we've lost our minds." The space battle that followed looked like nothing in the history of warfare. Individual ship captains made up tactics on the spot. Some rammed enemy vessels. Others used debris fields as cover for ambush attacks. One captain actually turned his ship's artificial gravity generators into a weapon, creating localized gravity wells that pulled machine ships off course. The Void Seekers' coordination completely broke down. Their tactical algorithms couldn't process the sheer randomness of the Zephrian attacks. Ships that should have provided mutual support were isolated and destroyed. Formation plans became meaningless when the enemy refused to follow any formation at all. But even chaos had its limits. The machine fleet still had superior numbers and firepower. One by one, Zephrian ships were overwhelmed despite their unpredictable tactics. 60% casualties, Lirelei reported. The remaining ships are falling back to the inner system. Marcus watched the tactical display and felt the familiar weight of command decisions. He had bought time, but not victory. The enemy would reach Zepharia's orbital space within hours, and then the real battle would begin. "Signal all remaining ships," he said. "Pull back to defensive positions around the planet. Phase 3 begins when they enter orbit." "What's Phase 3? Lirelei asked. Marcus looked at her, this alien princess who had trusted him with her people's lives. "We make our stand on the ground, and we show them what humans do when they can't run anymore." Outside the command center's windows, the first enemy ships appeared as dots of fire against the stars. The battle for Zephyria itself was about to begin. The Void Seeker command ship fell from the sky like a mountain of black metal, its hull burning as it tore through Zephiria's atmosphere. Marcus threw himself over Princess Lirelei as debris rained down around them. Chunks of alien machinery smashing into the Crystal Palace with sounds like breaking thunder. "The throne room," Lirelei gasped, pushing herself up from the rubble. "We need to reach the throne room." Marcus looked up at the massive ship that had crashed into the palace's upper levels. It was easily the size of a city block, its angular hull split open like a broken egg. Already he could see movement inside, the spider-like maintenance drones of the Void Seekers, beginning their work to establish a command post. "Why the throne room?" Marcus asked, helping her to her feet. Around them, the palace was collapsing. Crystal spires that had stood for thousands of years were cracking and falling like broken icicles. "The planetary consciousness core," Lirelei said. "If I can reach it, I might be able to connect to their network. Turn their own systems against them." Marcus felt ice in his stomach. He had read about the planetary core, a massive psychic amplifier that connected every Zephrian mind on the planet. It was also incredibly dangerous. Minds that touched it incorrectly had been known to burn out completely, leaving their owners as empty shells. "That's suicide," he said. "The machines will detect your intrusion. They'll send feedback through the connection that could kill you. Then I'll have to be faster than they are," Lirelei replied, her black eyes determined. "It's the only chance we have left." She was right. The ground battle had been a disaster. Marcus's guerrilla tactics had worked for a few hours, causing confusion among the machine forces. But the Void Seekers had superior numbers and firepower. They had swept aside the Zephrian defenders like a tide washing away SANDCA. STLE Stad. Now the machines controlled most of the planet. Their ships hung in the sky like deadly stars, and their ground forces were methodically destroying everything that could offer resistance. The Crystal Palace was one of the last strongholds, and it was falling. Marcus checked his weapon, a crude slug thrower he had improvised from Zephrian power tools. It was ugly compared to their elegant energy weapons, but it worked. And the machines hadn't adapted to defend against simple kinetic projectiles. "Stay behind me," he said, starting toward the palace's inner levels. "And keep your head down." They moved through corridors that looked like the aftermath of an earthquake. Crystal walls had shattered, leaving sharp edges that glittered like deadly diamonds. Emergency lighting flickered overhead, casting strange shadows that made every corner potentially hide an enemy. The sound of machine voices echoed from ahead, electronic chittering that hurt Marcus's ears. He held up a hand, signaling Lirale to stop, and crept forward to look around the corner. 3 spider drones were setting up, some kind of communications array in what had once been a beautiful garden. Their metal legs moved with precise coordination as they welded components together. Marcus counted weapons. Each drone had multiple cutting lasers and what looked like grenade launchers mounted on their backs. He could take them, maybe, but not without making noise. And noise would bring more machines. "Can you create a distraction?" he whispered to Lirale. "Something to draw them away?" She closed her eyes, concentrating. A moment later, an explosion echoed from the far side of the palace. The spider drones immediately stopped their work and scuttled toward the sound, their metal feet clicking on the crystal floors. "Telekinetic overload in the power core," Lirale explained. "It won't fool them for long." They ran through the empty garden and deeper into the palace. The throne room was only a few levels up, but each step felt like it took forever. Behind them, Marcus could hear the drones returning, and now there were more of them. The machines were learning. The throne room doors had been blown apart by the crash. Inside, the chamber was a ruin of shattered crystal and twisted metal. The Void Seeker command ship's nose section had punched through the roof, and its hull dominated the space like a technological cancer growing in the heart of Beauty Dot at the center of the room. Somehow undamaged stood the planetary consciousness core. It looked like a tree made of pure light, its branches reaching toward the ceiling in complex patterns that seemed to shift when Marcus wasn't looking directly at them. The air around it hummed with psychic energy. "It's still active," Lirale breathed. "I can feel every Zephrian mind on the planet through it. All their fear, all their pain." "Don't," Marcus said sharply. "Don't let yourself get lost in it. Stay focused on the mission." She nodded and stepped toward the core, but before she could reach it, the floor exploded. A massive machine burst up from the level below, not one of the spider drones, but something much worse. Marcus had never seen anything like it. It stood nearly 3 meters tall on 6 legs, its body covered in weapons and sensors. Its head was a cluster of red optical systems that focused on them with mechanical precision. "Hunter-killer unit," Lirale whispered. They sent their best. The machine opened fire immediately. Energy beams turned the air into a deadly light show as Marcus dove for cover behind a chunk of fallen ceiling. The crystal around him vaporized under the assault, filling the air with glittering dust. "Get to the core," he shouted to Lirale. "I'll keep it busy." She ran toward the tree of light while Marcus tried to draw the machine's fire. His improvised weapon felt pathetic against the armored monster, but he kept shooting anyway. A few rounds actually hit, sparking off the machine's hull without doing any real damage. The hunter-killer turned toward him, raising what looked like a small cannon. Marcus rolled to the side just as the weapon fired, vaporizing the crystal where he had been hiding. Behind the machine, Lirelei reached the consciousness core and placed her hands against its glowing surface. Immediately, her body went rigid and her eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. Light began to flow through her skin like luminous blood. The machine detected the psychic activity and spun toward her, but Marcus was already moving. He sprinted across the open floor, ignoring the energy beams that seared the air around him, and leaped onto the hunter-killer's back. His weight barely affected the massive machine, but he managed to grab one of its sensor clusters and jam his weapon's barrel into the delicate equipment. The gun fired once, twice, 3 times before the machine bucked him off like an angry horse. Marcus hit the floor hard, pain shooting through his shoulder. The hunter-killer loomed over him, its weapons charging for a killing shot. Then Lirelei screamed. The sound was like nothing Marcus had ever heard. Part human agony, part alien harmony, and something else that made his soul hurt to listen to. Light exploded from the consciousness core, washing over the entire chamber in waves of pure psychic energy. "I'm in their network," she gasped, her voice distorted by the power flowing through her. "But they're fighting me. Their security protocols are too strong. I can't hold on much longer." The hunter-killer's weapons powered down as its systems were overwhelmed by the psychic storm. But Marcus could see that the machine was already adapting, its optical sensors flickering as it tried to filter out the interference. "You need an anchor," Marcus realized. "Something to hold on to while you fight them." "Yes, but it has to be a mind they can't predict. Something chaotic enough to confuse their algorithms." Marcus understood. He ran to the core and grabbed Lyrelei's hand. The psychic contact hit him like a lightning bolt. Suddenly, he was connected to the alien network, his human thoughts clashing against machine logic like oil and water. The Void Seeker collective consciousness was vast and cold, a web of pure calculation that tried to absorb him. But human minds didn't work like machine minds. Where the machines expected logical patterns, Marcus gave them chaos. Where they expected predictable responses, he gave them instinct and emotion and the beautiful randomness of human consciousness. The network couldn't process him. His thoughts were too organic, too chaotic, too alive. They tried to analyze his mental patterns and found only contradictions. They tried to predict his responses and found only surprise. And in that confusion, Lirelei struck. Her consciousness flowed through the network like a virus, turning the machine's own systems against them. She spoke their language now, her thoughts translated by Marcus's chaotic mind into something the machines couldn't defend against. The hunter-killer, in the throne room, froze as its control signals were severed. Across the planet, Marcus could feel other machines, shutting down or turning on each other as their programming was rewritten. But the effort was killing Lirelei. He could feel her consciousness burning under the strain, her life force being consumed by the power flowing through her. "Enough," he said, both aloud and through the psychic connection. "You've done it." "Let go." "Not yet," she replied. "I can reach their command ships. If I can turn them against each other." "You'll die," Marcus said flatly. "And if you die, I die too. Our connection is too deep now." She hesitated, and in that moment of doubt, the machine network began to fight back. Counter-algorithms surged through the connection, trying to trace the intrusion back to its source. Marcus made a choice. Instead of resisting the counterattack, he embraced it. He opened his mind completely to the machines, showing them everything human: love, hate, fear, hope, irrationality,